Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined in the flesh today by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Good to see you. Good to see everyone else out there. And we've even got a blast from the past.
The Nokia N95, I think we were talking about before.
That's right. Probably not going to talk about it, but that's what it used to be like 10 years ago. Hello.
With the hardware keyboard as well.
With a hardware keyboard.
Back in the day.
Look at that for a piece of engineering.
Yes. So, it's typically like this will be our last episode for the year and we tend to do a bit of recapping and things. But before we get into that, we'll have a quick discussion just about the recent Yahoo hack and just talk a little bit about the fake news era that we're in. So maybe there's a little bit of correlation there, I'm not sure. But just starting with the Yahoo thing, I don't know about you, Steve, but when I saw another email come in, I wrote a blog post about it where I said I saw another email come in from Yahoo saying something about a significant security breach, and then I read through it and then I read the news that it was another billion accounts hacked.
Yeah.
Now, I only have a Yahoo account for our Flickr account, and now I'm seriously thinking of nuking it out of existence so that...
Nuke it, Ben.
Because really, but if a company like that has because it wasn't just the billion accounts, it was the 500 million that was announced. That's probably half of all the internet user base out there.
And I think the other thing that's concerning about it is that you would then have effectively two breaches times apart, but the information that they could get from having two snapshots would be very, very valuable.
So as a disclaimer, I won't be saying Flickr at the end of our, when we do our thing about subscribe to our accounts from now on. And if you happen to catch one of our back videos and see me talking about a Flickr account, unfortunately, it won't be any longer there. I think it's still there for now. Get in and have a look if you want. But, it was pretty much just duplicating the Instagram account we had. And
Insta good, mate. Not Flickr good. And I think Yahoo's going the same way as Nokia.
It's not good, is it? When you get a big tech giant like that breaking pretty badly like that.
Well, it's interesting. They've obviously fallen behind over the last few years, and of course there's been all the drama or the basically wind down of Yahoo now over the last 12 months. But the story is very similar to Nokia. They were in pole position there, probably a decade ago, and these breaches are part and parcel of that. I mean, I can't imagine Gmail or any of the Apple services getting hacked like this. Can you?
No.
They certainly wouldn't let us know if they had.
Well, I can't corroborate this, but I had heard, I don't know, through some third party, I wouldn't be surprised if this was the case, that they just didn't, I think I heard it on one of those tech podcasts that I listened to, that whoever was in charge of looking after the security at Yahoo wasn't taking it seriously. So there was a group basically telling the management, you've got to look at this, and they just said, don't worry about that. And now it could be the end of the company. Well, it's a breach of trust too far now for them.
I think when you are using a service that's that big, and I mean 1 billion users or 500 million users, they're huge numbers.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at a breach of that size, that's unconscionable that someone with that many people in their database, because we always say, you take the snapshot from Yahoo, and then if you hack any other database, whether it's, a retail database, loyalty database, whatever else it is, coffee club database, doesn't matter, and you match it, then that's when you can start to
the ID theft begins.
Yes, that's right. And it gives a lot of value to data. So I think something like that's very concerning. I thankfully never joined the Yahoo bandwagon ever. So it's something.
You're one of the other 1.5 billion that didn't get hit.
Yeah, well, he's given his details to everyone else quite willingly.
Alrighty, so we might move on to what has really become sort of the topic of the year, really, which is fake news. So the idea that, there'd be all these social media posts promoting what appears to be legitimate news, but it turns out that it's complete rubbish and people believing it.
Yeah.
And it kind of took on a new life during the US election with a whole lot of dodgy Trump and Clinton fake news stories running on Facebook or whatever. And with, I can't remember what the percentage was, but so many, like a big percentage of people getting their news off of Facebook rather than actually going to a news site, for instance. And that's a huge problem. What then becomes believable then? And on top of that, then you'd have like someone like Trump going out and saying you can't trust the reputable media outlets, and people believing it. And all of a sudden, real news may get delegitimized as a result of it, which is quite disturbing. And I can see it's going to just keep going.
Well, I think there's two effects, and there's precisely what you're saying is a big concern. But I think there's a second effect that can be manipulated or used just as effectively, which is by creating a whole lot of fake news, you can actually remove real news from the front page.
Yep.
So,
well, Trump's sending out a dodgy tweet, and then that consumes the media cycle.
I mean, I found it very interesting. A friend of mine, I don't know if he's a friend or colleague or something like that, I was reporting some stuff that he'd seen on the Daily Mail that turned out to be fake news.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'd been watching what's going on at the UN, and I don't want to get political here or anything, but I thought the story of what was going on at the UN was actually far more important, but it wasn't getting any news.
Yeah.
And it's because all this fake news builds up and just clogs everything. And even if you can tell the difference, then you just spend your time going, oh, that's fake, rather than getting a chance to find real news. And I think that we are now at a very serious juncture for our news, because this goes back to Wag the Dog, Dustin Hoffman in 91.
Yeah, yeah.
But no one ever thought it would be like this. And I don't think Facebook can help us. I mean, obviously they're taking steps, but I mean,
what are you going to do?
Well, what? They're just going to flag everything in your feed as fake?
Ban users that are putting out fake news.
And I'll go one step further with the fake news. What about what we all know about, which is fake reviews?
Yeah.
So you're looking at two products online, and one's got a really bad rap and the other one's got a really good one. What's it based on?
Yep.
So, and it doesn't matter whether that's, accommodation online. Although I must say, probably Airbnb is a little bit of a mechanism around that, but I'm talking more about the traditional hotel accommodation, whether it's retail products, home entertainment products.
Yeah.
Thankfully, in terms of art, popular opinion still rules with music and that sort of thing. But still, I'm a little bit concerned, Ben.
Well, I mean, I think you have every reason to be. The other disturbing aspect that I wanted to just touch on with this too is this idea that fake news is more entertaining and thereby will catch the audience's interest more. Now,
it is more entertaining.
but the thing is that I think we've discussed, offline before about how news has become, even legitimate news has become entertainment rather than news on a lot of commercial TV, for instance.
That's right.
So this is like the next step. Just make it up, and then entertain people. And not having a mechanism for people to question it or figure out what's real and what's not that's, like you said, where the disturbing angle comes in.
Well, potentially it could take us, even though with all the abundance of communication, it could take us to back to a dark age where people either question everything and know nothing, or people question nothing
and accept everything.
And know everything, or something, which isn't good either way. So I'm not sure how that will turn out. But I admire Facebook for taking steps, but I just don't think that they can really do anything useful. They don't have editorial control really over what anyone posts. So the fact that news has made it into the Facebook arena, for better or for worse, is a fact. So whether or not Facebook just comes out and says, well, Facebook is only an entertainment platform. We don't accept real news at all. That would probably be more helpful than trying to determine what's real news.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we could leave real news for Twitter.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. We might move on a little bit. Because it's a bit of a recap show that we're doing today, we'll just go through a couple of the topics that we covered this year. And actually, I just wanted to touch on, I think the last time we actually filmed an episode in this location was our last episode of Fist Chat, actually.
Wow.
So a couple of years ago. So
wow.
I was just remarking on, we used to sort of punch out an episode a week. So we used to have about 50 odd episodes. We're taking a bit more of a leisurely approach now. I think we had about 30 odd this year for SciTech Culture.
Still good effort.
Still good. But I was just having a look at some of them, and I mean, Apple's encryption battle with the FBI kind of ties in with a little bit with what we're talking about here, and how that will play out going forward now that he has to, like you get those tech guys having to go meet with Trump and, whatever it is they're doing. I just watched Jason Bourne, the film from this year, and a big part of that film was about the CIA hooking up with a, fictitious Steve Jobs type to create a backdoor for the CIA into their unhackable operating system. And you wonder, maybe, who knows if that's happening or not. But you wonder, because the stories come out that way. Tim Cook made a really big thing about we're not creating backdoors for people, anyone.
Well, and that is a really interesting point, because that seems to be some last bastion of the internet. And for the big incumbents, your Apples, your Microsofts, your Googles, they still appear, at least publicly, to hold true to that.
Yeah.
But I don't know for how much longer. I mean, and let's just take it on face value that they do believe that.
Yeah.
And I personally, I think I tend to lean their way. I tend to believe that they say that because of the value of the data, for no other reason. But can that be sustained, do you think?
Well, and we'll never know, because the media release will never come out and say it, will it? It'll always, it was in the film, he went out in front of the shareholders and said, no one's ever going to have a backdoor to our thing. And then in the next scene, he's talking to the CIA director about the backdoor he's putting in.
But surely that sort of thing can't be kept a secret for long.
Probably in this day and age, but then if you go back to fake news, who knows what?
That's right. Yeah.
Who will pick up on it?
Well, that's true, because if they come out and they put out enough news that the conspiracy exists, then when it actually is found out to be true, no one will care anyway.
Yeah,
and that's one of the benefits of fake news. Yeah,
exactly.
Good point.
Just staying on the content front, we had an episode, Do We Value Content and Services Anymore? And I think we just had a fairly lengthy discussion this morning before we started recording this about, we were talking about film specifically, but just in general, it's just it seems like any sort of content, and fake news fits into this perfectly, is that it all has become like a jumbled mess. There's all these screens everywhere that we can watch stuff in and it's sort of like a premium experience everywhere now. It's not just going to the cinema or whatnot. I'll just throw in quickly, there was an article about Scorsese saying cinema was dead because there's just so many images blanketing our culture now that they have no meaning of themselves, which I kind of agree on, even though he got crucified by the millennials on forums and whatnot after the fact. But I think there's an argument for that. I think on the flip side, it's really good that you can watch anything at any time at the touch of a button, but then at the same time, it's like a lazy abundance. You don't have to go, it's almost like too much stuff is accessible to you. You don't even know what to pick or what to watch. And because it's always available at any time, you can watch it at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can watch it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you can watch it on a public holiday, you can watch it at work, you can watch it on a flight. It's all instantly accessible. So does that mean because it's always there, do you actually value it? Like how in the past you'd have to wait for a film to come out, they'd announce it, you'd have to wait for 6 months, and then you could only watch it in a cinema.
Yeah, you've got me thinking about this, Ben, and I think you've hit on something that's quite interesting there. We won't talk too much about Rogue One, but the fact is they release it now annually, a Star Wars franchise, without any promotion because they don't need to.
Yep.
And people wait all year long for this event, and it's almost like Christmas, or probably Christmas is a good example. You don't care if it's going to be good or bad. You just care that it's Christmas. And I just kind of wonder if that's once again almost the extremes we're going to. On the one hand, everything else has been devalued because of its abundance. And then on the other hand, they supercharge a single date for the release of this particular film franchise. And it doesn't actually matter whether the film's going to be good or bad.
It's just there.
It's just there. And so you fire yourself up all year, and it's a bit like going to a sporting match almost. Like you go to support your team, and if you lose, you kind of feel a bit bad, but you had the experience. And if you win, you feel fantastic. And maybe that's what it's kind of like. That event programming is almost in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you wait all year for a Star Wars film and you don't know whether it's going to be good or bad, and it's like going to a game, the tension,
The only thing that I can say is that in growing up, going to the cinema specifically, I would get excited by the announcement of new releases. So an example would say be the Lord of the Rings trilogy, knowing that they would come out in December, and it would be an exciting time to watch the latest installment, because there was a 3-year period where they came out one after another, and that was exciting. But there was the film actually turned out to be really high quality and good storytelling and all that. Without going into the specifics of Rogue One, it was not. But the problem with that is that regardless of whether it was good or not, I actually was not excited at all. I was completely ambivalent. I watched it and I walked out ambivalent.
Right.
Which I can probably say about The Force Awakens from last year as well. And the only thing is I had a bit more of a negative feel for that one, because I just couldn't see the point of them remaking the first film again and making $2 billion off it. Good luck to them. But,
Sounds like you should have gone and seen Sing.
Exactly. And it's just become a form of cultural recycling, which I think we touched upon as well earlier in one of our early episodes.
Exactly.
Where it doesn't matter anymore. It's people just walk out and with the attitude, oh yeah, that was all right, and they move on, and then they go and watch something else, and the film becomes almost disposable. And I find a lot of entertainment is like that now, and I'd argue that the experience, say, watching something on Netflix is better than going to see something in the cinema, because at least on Netflix there's more of a chance that you might see something that was of decent storytelling quality, shall we say.
You're right. And I think that's something that we've really seen change. And I remember back in the Fist Chat days, we were talking about, will Netflix actually continue to improve? And I think it has. I think there's no question it has.
Absolutely. We might just touch on sort of two intertwining topics as well, about Brexit and the Trump phenomenon, which are basically not one and the same thing, but they're sort of feeding off each other in the sense of what caused them is probably roughly in the same ballpark. And we talked about that in 2 of our episodes this year. And it'll be fascinating seeing how the world sort of goes over the next couple of years in terms of reacting to what's happened. It appears to be that there has been a backlash against, say, the last 3 decades of how the world was progressing by a certain demographic, shall we say, without going into too much detail. But it's like... this is going to sound weird, but it feels like chaos theory to me. It's like just when you think the world wants to get settled into a nice, peaceful system, something comes along to completely throw a spanner in the works, to just throw it out the window and make everything uncertain. And that kind of feels like what it is to me.
Well, yeah, and it can happen so quickly now too.
Yeah.
So the idea is, I don't think you could have had a Brexit 10 years ago. And I don't think you could have had a Trump victory 10 years ago. But I think that just goes to show you, there's a lot of commentary around, the forgotten people and all that sort of, but I think it's got more to do with the ability of these groups to communicate specific messaging to these groups. Bang. You can achieve things now without achieving anything at all.
Yes, that's right. And actually, just tying in with the whole film stuff that we were just saying then, I think it's almost like Bill Burr, one of the comedians I've been watching recently, went on Conan and said, dude, the star of a reality TV show
put this link up again, Ben.
He's going to run the country. Yeah. Like, has anyone not thought about that for a second and taken a deep breath about that? Because it's like, well, what world are we living in now that can happen?
Well, that's right. That's right. And as we said at the time, I mean, this is a real watershed, because it was shown that a lot of people that voted for Trump didn't even like Trump. They just liked what he was saying, which gets back to...
Or not even all of what he was saying.
Or not, just some of what he was saying, which is even more concerning because, okay, so we're going to elect someone who we only like part of what he's saying, that his character is fully exposed. And so everyone can say quite confidently, if you're one of these people, I don't like Trump for whatever reason. But I like part of what he's saying, so I'm going to vote for him. I mean, that's just nuts.
Yep. But that's the topsy-turvy world we're living in now.
That is. I don't understand it.
So just moving on from that, and we'll finish up on this point. 2017, how's it looking for you, Steve?
It's not going to get any better.
I think it'll be an interesting year, I think, next year. I mean, we've got a couple of those things that are concerning to us, but then there are other things as well, like advances in technology and all that sort of thing.
I think next year the big thing will be AI. We're already starting to see machine learning creep into everything, algorithms creep into everything, whether it's your music selection, whether it's how you interact with devices in your own home. I think next year is going to be big for that, and I don't think that generally the world's ready.
No, and I think we're still struggling. I think we're now starting to get to that point where the world is struggling and people are struggling to figure out how these advances in technology should be used, as opposed to, we can do this. And again, if we go back to the Trump Twitter feed, for instance, he now has the ability with that to override a news cycle in 140 characters.
Well, that's right.
Given from his position. Now, you have to think about that for a second, because it's great. Okay, that's a new... it's not a new technology, but it's, over a 100-year period, say, for instance, that's relatively new phenomenon. But that may, dare I say, be an irresponsible way of using the technology, as opposed to some other way that you could do it.
Well, it could be used for good, or it could be used for bad.
And that's something I don't think has been reconciled yet, and will continue on into next year as well.
I think the most powerful people on the social media platforms don't actually know the difference, and I think that's the key. I think at some stage we will see some essence of ethics.
Yes.
Or social conscience hit people, but I don't know whether it'll be next year
or ever. That's if you're feeling particularly pessimistic.
Maybe after Armageddon. I don't know.
Exactly. On that note, we might wrap it up there. So it's another good year, Steve, for another good lot of episodes there. We'll be back next year, of course, to do some more. I'm resolving the fact that I want to get back to writing more blogs next year, which I hope I'll have a bit more time for. I was a bit under the pump over the last
I'm going to start to do the same thing myself, I think.
Because it's like a muscle. You have to keep on working at it. Any of you writers out there, just keep on writing, even if it's crap, every day.
Because it'll only get better.
That's right. And it'll just flow out of you. And I just have to get my lazy ass into gear to make that happen.
Get back on the horse, Ben.
Absolutely. All right. So don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all our links there and subscribe to us. We'd greatly appreciate that. We're no longer a Flickr account, but we've got Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Instagram. You can interact with us there, so I'd love to hear from you. And send anyone you think who might be interested in our discussions that we have on a regular basis to scitechculture.com and get them to subscribe. All right, so that's it for this episode and this year. We'll see you all again next year, and we'll catch you then.